trauma doesn't just affect how you feel emotionally, it reshapes how you relate to your body. It doesn't just sit in your past and rot away there. It rewires your nervous system in a way that changes how you experience symptoms, in a way that changes how you receive health advice, even how you rest. And we often think of trauma as something that is big, something that is dramatic, like an accident or abuse, and those absolutely count. But trauma in the nervous system is really anything that was too much, too fast, or not enough, and you had to go through it alone. And I do want to say that there are differences, again, between big trauma, like big T traumas and little t traumas, but the nervous system doesn't fully distinguish the two, right? That can be emotional neglect, it can be medical dismissal, a season of survival that you didn't have support through. All of these impact the nervous system in the same way, ultimately, right? They're all triggering the stress response when you simplify it. And here's what happens when the body doesn't feel safe during those times. It starts to adapt. It starts to survive. And in the process, it starts to internalize a whole new set of rules for how to respond to pain, to illness, to fatigue, to trauma. Rules like, if I ignore it, it'll go away. I can't afford to slow down. If I look sick, I'll be treated differently. My symptoms are probably just in my head. People only care when I'm productive. It's not safe enough for me to ask for help. That is why some women, especially those who have gone through chronic stress, who've gone through grief, medical gaslighting, early trauma, invisible illnesses, find themselves shutting down instead of reaching out. They're powering through instead of pausing. They're overanalyzing every single symptom with fear instead of trust. And then the body starts to feel like the enemy, or at least deeply unreliable. And the truth is that your body didn't betray you. Your body is trying to protect you with the tools that it has. So take a breath with me here. And if you are able to, maybe try to reflect on this for a moment. What did I learn about being sick, asking for help, or resting, especially when I was young? Sometimes the roots of our current fatigue or disconnection go much deeper than the latest lab result or supplement stack. Sometimes the root is a nervous system that never got to feel safe in the body, so it decided not to trust it. So let's talk about some patterns that tend to show up in women who have experienced nervous system dysregulation, chronic illness, or unresolved trauma. And I call these 3 trauma-formed health belief archetypes. And while they're not clinical labels, they can be incredibly helpful lenses to understand your behavior without shame. Because the truth is that these patterns are not personality flaws, they are survival responses. They were smart, they were adaptive, they got you through something, and now you are allowed to choose something different. So let's start with the first one. This archetype is the overfunctioner. So this is the woman who's always going, who's always helping, who's always proving, and rest feels dangerous because in her nervous system, rest meant vulnerability. It meant being judged, being called lazy. Maybe it simply wasn't modeled at all. So she associates that movement with safety. If she's being productive, she's okay. If she slows down, that's when the guilt and the shame sets in. And she might think, well, if I stop, everything's going to fall apart. Or rest is for people who've earned it, and I haven't earned rest. And this belief often forms when love and safety were earned through achievement. So maybe as a kid, you got attention only when you excelled. Or you learned that being useful kept you out of trouble. And your nervous system paired that busyness with belonging. And now, even when your body is screaming for a break, it feels safer just to keep going. Then we have the health hyper fixer. So this archetype is all about control. If the overfunctioner avoids slowing down, the hyper fixer goes all in on health specifically. They're trying every supplement, every diet, every protocol and trend in hopes of finally feeling safe in her body. But underneath that drive is a deep, unspoken fear that if I don't figure this out perfectly, something bad will happen. And this woman is the one that reads every label. She's researching at 2 a.m. She's switching protocols constantly and then blaming herself when something flares up. And this belief often forms when your symptoms were brushed off or when medical systems failed you. If your body once felt unpredictable or it felt unsafe, controlling everything that you can starts to feel like your only option. And the problem is that hypervigilance is exhausting and it keeps you stuck in a stress loop, even when you're doing all of the right things. And then there's the woman who doesn't necessarily push or control, but she disconnects. And this is the detached observer. This is the one that says, I don't know how to feel, or I can't tell if I'm hungry or if I'm tired, or I know I should care, but I don't. She's not lazy. She's not numb by choice. She's in a freeze state. And this belief often forms when feeling anything, whether it's pain, fear, grief, rejection, feeling overwhelming, or feeling unsafe. So the body decided to create a brilliant solution called disconnection. So you might dissociate during flare-ups, or you feel like your symptoms are happening to someone else. Maybe you're ignoring them until they scream, or you just go emotionally blank when people ask how you're doing. And that is survival physiology. So let's pause right here for a moment with a question. Which one of these archetypes do I see in myself? You know, maybe you see one of these in yourself right now. Maybe you have seen yourself shift through these different archetypes. Maybe you're in a mix of all three right now in the season that you're in. And maybe none of them quite fit you right now, but they do spark reflection on your past. So if you have noticed that one of these patterns reflects you, whether it's current you, past you, don't rush to fix it. Just notice it. Offer it some compassion, some love, some grace, some acknowledgement, because these aren't things that we necessarily want to immediately get rid of, right? They're invitations, they're information, messages to understand what our body has been trying to protect us from. So because once you see the pattern clearly, you can start to shift it, right? You can shift it gently and safely and without shame. So we're not here to diagnose or, explain away these coping strategies in a way that says you need therapy. We are here to recognize them as evidence of your strength and your resilience, to honor your body for doing what it was doing, what it was trained to do, right? But to also remember that you don't have to live in survival mode anymore. So trauma doesn't just create symptoms, right? Whether it's the big T trauma or little t trauma, it doesn't just create symptoms. It trains the nervous system to see familiar patterns and discomfort as safer than unfamiliar healing. And this is why some people end up staying stuck in exhaustion or pain, even when they deeply want to heal, even when they want to get better, they want to do these things. Their survival system doesn't know how to relax into safety. It only knows how to anticipate a threat. And that can look like you feeling uneasy, even though you had a really good day, but you're waiting on the other shoe to drop, or you're waiting for your body to crash. Maybe you worry that if you do start to feel better, people are going to expect more of you, or you're going to have more responsibility and you don't know what exactly that's going to look like. Maybe you have a fear of losing your identity or accommodations or rest if your symptoms disappear. This isn't always a conscious choice, right? This is the nervous system favoring what is predictable, not what is ideal. It would rather stay in known discomfort than risk the vulnerability of change. Change is scary, right? And that's a false safety, though. The idea that symptoms or shutdown keep you protected. It is an adaptive response. It is not a failure. So biologically, this is driven by survival wiring. Your brain is prioritizing energy towards survival and taking it away from healing. Patterns that were once protective become your default nature. It's the default setting. And the body braces even far after that threat is gone. And it's important to remember that we don't want to force healing. We don't want to force trust, because it's going to meet us with resistance, right? We need to build that safety slowly through safety cues, through consistency, through co-regulation with other people who are on the same journey or who have been through the same journey, and nervous system tools that match your current capacity. Medical trauma happens when you are dismissed, when you are doubted or neglected in a healthcare setting. So this doesn't mean that it has to be violent or harmful. And here are a few ways that it can show up. So maybe because of medical trauma, you stop seeking help altogether. Maybe you second guess your symptoms or sanity. You start to prep obsessively for your appointments in order for them to be taken seriously. And then you internalize messages like, it's all in your head, you're just anxious, it's normal, your labs are normal, go home. And over time, these experiences shape our core beliefs. And then you start to think, well, I'm probably overreacting. No one's going to believe me. It's easier to deal with this alone. And these are not irrational beliefs. They are survival strategies in a system that failed to support you. And I see so many women, and this dismissal is magnified for them, right? Maybe it's magnified by their gender or their race or their body size or their neurodivergence, and you are not imagining it. The system is flawed. So here's what gets missed. Medical trauma doesn't just damage your trust in your provider. It damages your trust in yourself. It teaches you to override your symptoms, to minimize your pain, to ignore your body's messages. And it keeps you disconnected even when you're actively trying to heal. So if you feel guarded, if you feel defensive, if you feel avoidant with your body, it's not necessarily self-sabotage. It is protection, and it makes sense. So let's try and gently reframe this. You are not too much. You were under-supported. You adapted. And you are allowed to rebuild trust with your body slowly. And on top of that, you are allowed to seek care that doesn't re-traumatize you. So let's talk about the invisible script that many of us are handed when we start trying to heal. Especially if we've been carrying a lot of trauma, whether it's a buildup of little t trauma or big T trauma. Trauma teaches us to move quickly. It teaches us urgency and not patience. We have to fix it now. We have to do it perfectly. Don't let anyone else see the cracks. So when we bring that mindset into our healing, into chronic illness, into fatigue, into nervous system recovery, it starts to backfire. Maybe you find a new protocol or a program and you go all in, and you're determined and you're disciplined and you're motivated and you do everything right. And maybe that's for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and then you get really exhausted. And when the results don't show up immediately, you crash and feel discouraged, and then you feel like you failed. So you quit, or you bounce on to the next thing and you hope, well, maybe this one's going to work faster, better, and cleaner. And if it doesn't, the shame gets deeper. And this is a huge trauma loop that I see so many women catching themselves in when they have trauma, when they have chronic illnesses. And this is what I caught myself in when I was deep in a freeze state. And it's not that you are inconsistent or self-sabotaging. It is that your nervous system is operating under that survival logic, right? Fix it fast or it's not safe. Now, the deeper issue is that urgency and that perfectionism aren't just bad habits, they are protective responses. They show up when you're scared, when you're trying to outrun grief or shame or fear or the pain of having no control or some other emotion or feeling that's uncomfortable or unfamiliar, right? They give you the illusion of control until they don't. And I know for me, when I was in a deep freeze and I was bedridden, I was thinking, I should be better by now. I spent months, actually really over a year, seeing different providers and was not making any progress. And I was like, I should be better by now. If I were doing it right, I wouldn't still feel this way. I just need to be more disciplined. I need to work harder, but I just have no energy. But healing isn't meant to be a test, right? Your body is not a project. It's not something you have to perfect. It is a living system. It needs consistency, not more pressure. It needs permission to slowly change. So ask yourself today, what does my nervous system think healing is supposed to feel like? I want you to seriously ask yourself that. Answer that in the comments if you're comfortable. If not, I do encourage you to journal it so that you can come back to it at a later date. And I really want you to note, does it feel rushed? Is there pressure? Is there a voice that is saying, do more or else, right? If that felt sense of healing is tight or it's urgent or it's anxious, your system is still bracing. Even if you're doing the right things, that internal experience matters more. Who cares? Why does that matter? Your body cannot receive nourishment and healing if it's in that fight or flight state. It cannot repair while it's being rushed. It won't feel safe enough to soften if it's constantly being criticized the whole way through. So what if healing doesn't feel like a test? What if it doesn't feel like pressure? What if it felt soft and quiet and curious, right? We need to get curious about our progress, curious about our symptoms, because they are messages from our body. Ask yourself, what is my body trying to say today? That's where the change starts, right? Not by pushing and pushing and pushing, but by listening differently, maybe from a different perspective. Now, let's talk about what actually makes healing possible. And I will tell you, it is not the perfect diet. It is not the most expensive or lengthy supplement protocol. It's not how many hours of sleep you get or exercise, although these things can be beneficial. It is how safe your body feels to receive healing. If your body still thinks that it's in danger, it will block even the most well-meaning care, not because it's broken, but because it's protective, right? Our body's goal is to protect itself. So the goal isn't to force healing. Our goal is to create conditions that feel safe enough where healing is allowed. And that starts with rebuilding that inner safety, right? It's that shift to, from believing that I have to earn my rest to believing that rest is healthy, that it's okay, that it's safe, that it is repair. From thinking I should be further along to I'm exactly where I need to be to heal, right? Or I'm doing it wrong to my body speaks a different language and I am here to listen. I'm learning how to listen. And those rewires don't happen quickly in your head, right? They happen all throughout your body, all throughout your nervous system, when your daily experiences are reinforcing them. That's why when I talk to you guys in the other videos, I talk a lot about safety cues, because our nervous system wants cues. It wants to feel safe. You can use affirmations all day, every day, but if you don't feel safe when you say them, it doesn't matter. It's not going to make a difference. And this is why co-regulation is the biggest part of healing. So many of us were taught to do everything alone, that hyper independence, right? With trauma and with chronic illnesses, we are taught or conditioned to hide our pain, to be low maintenance, but the nervous system doesn't regulate in isolation, right? It needs safe connection to settle. And you can absolutely heal some things solo. But that deeper sense of safety, that long-term nervous system rewiring, requires moments of being seen, being soothed and supported by people who care for you. And that is why we have the garden, which is our private community. And we focus on rebuilding foundations of inner and outer safety, right? Helping the body exit that chronic survival mode, identifying those trauma-based beliefs that are still shaping your approach to healing, and gently replacing them with embodied safety cues. Actual slow nervous system enforced changes, compassion, consistency. And if you're stuck, it's not because you aren't trying hard enough. It's likely because your body is bracing for the next blow and you weren't taught how to give it cues, right? So let's finish with something that you can do starting today. Rewriting your healing story doesn't mean that you have to overhaul your entire life. It means that you get to create a new starting point. You don't have to be unrecognizably healed by next month. You just need one place in your day where the story starts to sound different. So every morning or every evening, write down one sentence of compassion to your body. I'm really big on gratitude. I'm writing down 3 things in the evening that you are thankful for. So I'm telling you that because it's also very good for you. But this is focusing on compassion. So every single morning, write something down that's compassionate to you, to your body. It can be, I hear you, you make sense. Or thank you for speaking to me. You know, I see how hard you're working. Thank you for trying to protect me. You're not behind, you're healing. This is truthful compassion. These are different from, straight affirmations. These need to be honest. You believe it, you feel it. Things that are really compassionately driven, right? You can also track your symptoms alongside your emotions. And I want to emphasize that when I talk about tracking your symptoms, it is not meant to obsess. If you find yourself obsessing over your symptoms, it's probably better to not track them for a while or get more strict about how much time and how much effort and how detailed you are around tracking. Because when we obsess over our symptoms, again, it reinforces the stress response. And what does reinforcement of the stress response do? Increases our symptoms, right? It increases the stress hormones, it triggers the stress response, floods our system, causes a high heart rate, causes the anxiety, the muscle tension, which leads to pain, all of these things, inflammation. All of this data, though, if you do decide to track your symptoms along with your emotions, this data can teach you so much more than a lab test can. And I am an advocate for functional medicine testing, functional lab testing. I do this with my patients. I've done it on myself, and I do think it can give you high quality data. But what I am saying here is that you listening to your body will tell you things that lab tests will never tell you, okay? You know your body better than any doctor, better than any lab test, all right? It helps you to build a real-time understanding and a relationship with what your body is asking for, what your nervous system wants. All right, so your beliefs about health were shaped by what you've lived through. but they don't have to stay that way. You are allowed to choose a different path. You are allowed to choose different beliefs. You are allowed to shift your thinking. You are allowed to choose safety, to choose compassion, trust. And if you want support on this path, we do welcome you to explore the garden with us for more conversations like this, for community and co-regulation. And if you are feeling disconnected, please check out our channel for EFT videos that are there for you at any time. They are designed to help calm your nervous system, to rewire your brain, how you think. We acknowledge self-limiting beliefs, and then we turn them around. We gently reframe them into something more positive, more accepting, and curious. So remember that you are not alone in this. We appreciate you for being here. It's been such a blessing being able to speak with you today, and we'll see you in the next video.